Hello, I'm Stephen Ratcliffe. Welcome to the channel, and in today's video we're going to be covering an exercise that involves improving compassion for yourself, for other people, and also helps you respond and react in a way that's more in line with the person you want to be. So today's exercise is a great resource, and it comes from compassion focused therapy. And similar to my other video on the safe place exercise, it comes from this wonderful book called the Compassionate Mind Workbook. And I have the consent from the authors that I can do this exercise with you. There's a wonderful script within this that I sort of tweak slightly that I really love, and I've done this a lot with a lot of my clients, and they found this very helpful. So that's why I'm sharing it with you. I hope this is helpful for you too. If you want to jump ahead to the exercise, by all means, look at the numbers on screen and skip ahead if you'd like to. But I'll start with just giving you a little bit of context for why this is helpful and what this exercise involves. So as I've mentioned before, visualization and using imagery is a wonderful tool to use in therapy. We see it a lot within different types of therapies, and particularly compassion-focused therapy, it's really common. Now, just before we start this exercise, it's really helpful to just take a note of what you would see as being compassionate qualities. So these are compassionate qualities you might have seen in other people around you. Maybe you show them yourself and you're aware of them. And it's really helpful because when we're developing our ideal compassionate self, which is what this exercise is about, it's really helpful to identify the person you want to be. And if we were to identify our ideal compassionate self, what would they look like? How would they behave? What sort of qualities would they have? So it might be helpful to just take a moment just to note down some of these qualities that you would like to see in yourself. So they could be things like warmth, being genuine, understanding, being able to show empathy, this sort of caring commitment towards other people and also to ourselves. Other qualities can involve things like wisdom, having the wisdom to understand the challenges that life sort of throws at us and the stresses that we come across. The wisdom to understand that we're all, trying to do our best with what we have, and the difficulties that we have in life, that a lot of these are not our fault, that it's the way our brains are designed and being human being. Or maybe the wisdom to understand the solutions to some of the problems that we're facing. It can also be courage as a quality there. So courage and strength. That sometimes we have to face our fears. We have to put ourselves in uncomfortable scenarios to be able to grow, to develop. And that can be really tough. To maybe assert ourselves in situations and be able to express our thoughts and our feelings at times and show confidence and assertion, even though that feels uncomfortable for us. So there might be lots of qualities that you have that you can think about that you want to use to develop our ideal compassionate self, and doing that now and taking a moment to take stock of those qualities is really helpful to do just before we start. I usually spend a bit of time in therapy fleshing some of these out and talking about that more on a deeper level. So this exercise is going to get you to visualize as vividly as you can your ideal compassionate self, almost like standing in front of you. And you're going to be stepping into that role, a bit similar to a method actor would sort of step into the role of their character. We're going to do something similar and visualize that happening. So I just want you to just maybe take a moment just to think about what your ideal compassionate self would look like, just to give you some ideas. It can be you as you are now. It can be you with some small tweaks and changes. You as you're older, younger, a different gender, whatever you'd like it to be. That's the beauty of the imagination. It can also be somebody very different to who you are now as well. Sometimes having a little moment just to think about what that might look like is really helpful to do before this exercise. But don't worry if this changes as we go through the exercise. Don't worry if that adjusts and shifts and changes. That's okay too. And you can always repeat this exercise too. Okay, to start with, just sit in an upright but comfortable position. And just try to adopt a grounded, confident position in your chair. Feel free to close your eyes throughout this exercise and just start with just engaging in a nice relaxing rhythm of breathing. that feels soothing to you. So breathing nice and slowly in through your nose, holding it for a moment, and blowing out through your mouth. And again, just holding it for a moment. And just repeating that cycle at a rate that feels comfortable for you. And while you do this, I invite you to engage in a friendly facial expression. Maybe a half smile. I'm just going to stay with your breathing a little while longer, just to help relax the mind and the body. Feel free to move your body if it needs to, ease out any tensions that you might have. And just feeling grounded, feeling your feet on the floor. And just allow your breathing to slow a little. Just gently resting your attention on the flow of breathing in and breathing out. So in this exercise, I'm going to ask you to imagine that you can see your compassionate self in front of you, embodying certain qualities. Now this can be you as you see yourself in the mirror, or a version of you, for example, an image resembling you with a few small differences. However, you may imagine your compassionate self as someone quite different to you. Someone you feel embodies compassion. For example, a colleague, a friend, or someone you've seen on TV or films. So we'll spend some time just reminding you and informing you of some of the core qualities of compassion that I mentioned before. So 3 of these pillars are wisdom, strength, and caring commitment. And here we will go through them one at a time. So the first quality of your compassionate self is wisdom. Now there are many sources of wisdom. One comes from an understanding that we have tricky brains that can often get caught up in loops of strong emotions and desires and are difficult to control. We didn't choose to have a mind that works like this. And in fact, so much of who we are, our genes, our gender, our ethnicity or culture, we did not choose either. But this has had a significant effect on the person we are today. If we'd have been raised by our next door neighbours rather than in our house by our caregivers, we would be a very different person today. So your compassionate self has a deep wisdom about the nature of life itself and knows that so many of our problems are rooted in things that have been beyond our control. That much of what goes on in our minds is not our fault. The wisdom of your compassionate self is also linked to learning how to take responsibility for trying to do something about all this suffering. This involves stepping back from blame, shame, and judgment, and cultivating our minds in a way that might be helpful. So just as the grass, the flowers, and shrubs of a garden can grow in all sorts of ways if left to themselves, the wisdom of your compassionate self can help you appreciate that if the version of you is not how you'd like it to be, that if it is contributing to your or others' distress, that you can do something to change things. Now, bring to mind the quality of strength and authority. This strength emerges from both the wisdom of understanding the reality of distress and suffering in life, but also the commitment we have to do what we can about this. It involves a courage to face difficulties and tolerate the discomfort they bring. as well as our fears about change. So imagine that your compassionate self is strong and has an inner confidence to it. Consider what tone of voice you would use and how you might stand and walk. And finally, let's focus on the quality of commitment. Your compassionate self has a deep, caring commitment. Now, this is partly linked to an appreciation that life can be very hard. So given this, your compassionate self is motivated to be caring and committed to alleviate your own and other people's suffering. It also has a desire to contribute to your own and other people's well-being. Just take a moment to reflect on this. Take a moment now to imagine your compassionate self, this committed, wise and strong character. Imagine what they would look like if you could see it in front of you. Build this image as vividly as you can, considering its height and appearance, maybe even the clothes it would wear. And as we mentioned, this version might look like you or might be similar in some ways, but might be very different too. Build this image in your mind of your ideal compassionate self. Now take a few moments to consider aspects of its appearance and nature. So imagine how your compassionate self might stand, given their commitment and strength. Just visualize this. Imagine what their facial expression would be, and how this would convey their wise and compassionate nature. Imagine what their voice tone would sound like, and how this would convey their caring nature and strength. And when you have an outline of this image, and you can get a sense of this standing in front of you, imagine now slowly moving towards it. Let's pay attention to its posture, facial expression, and compassionate qualities. And as you get closer to it, imagine now merging with it. Imagine stepping into the shoes of this image, your ideal compassionate self. You're now standing in the shoes of this compassionate version of you, in its body and posture. Looking out of its eyes with motivation to be kind, caring and compassionate in the world. Just notice how it feels to be embodying your ideal compassionate self, with their wisdom, caring commitment and strength. And if it helps, imagine walking in the body of your ideal compassionate self. Just notice how you would hold your body, how you would move, your facial expression and posture as you move around as your compassionate self. And while you are your ideal compassionate self, just consider a recent challenge or issue that you've been facing over the past week. Might be some difficult negative thoughts or scenarios that have been challenging for you. I want you to just take a moment to engage in those challenges that you've had and just see what you would do as your ideal compassionate self. How would your compassionate self respond to that? How would they deal with some of those negative thoughts or feelings? When you've done this, just take another moment just to embody and connect with your ideal compassionate self. Just noticing what it feels like, noticing those qualities. And when you feel ready, feel free to just allow this image to fade away. And just take a moment to tune back into your soothing breathing. And when you're ready, feel free to open your eyes and come back into the room. Thank you for watching this video and engaging in this exercise with me. I hope it's been helpful. Feel free to share this with anybody else that you feel this might benefit, and maybe leave any comments that you might have about whether you found this helpful. It's great for reframing thoughts in a more compassionate way, and also thinking about potential actions that we can take as well that might help us in our situation. So I recommend you having a go at this as often as you can, to engage with your ideal compassionate self and see how that helps you. Take care. Bye-bye.